Welcome, welcome everyone. We are so excited to have y'all here tonight as we hop into our first town hall since the conference. I know the three of us were so excited to see each other in the flesh. And so I hope a lot of you that are joining, we also got to say hi to you and got to see you in person. And most importantly, I hope that you were able to see each other in person. I think it's so incredible that we have just seen this OCD community, this virtual community blossom and grow over the past couple years, that I hope a lot of you had an opportunity to meet each other in person, because there is nothing better than this community and then having each other. So I just wanted to say hi and start off, and in a second, we'll hop into our disclaimers. But of course, we are just so excited to have y'all here. So if you're here, please let us know your name, where you're joining from, and just say hi. Let us know if you have any particular questions or anything we can answer today, because that's what we want to be able to do. So what's weird is that there's only three of us and there should be six. So you are not seeing things incorrectly. It is the truth. Life happens. So all of our other lead advocates, Tom Smalley, Katie O'Dunn, and Ethan Smith, unfortunately are not going to be able to join tonight. So you're stuck with us three. But I can promise you, I know you're probably sick of Chris and I, but you're going to be so excited to hear from Val, as I know I am, and I'm sure Chris is. So it's fun for us to be here. Our job tonight is just to talk about the conference. I know Chris has some pre-submitted questions, and we'll kind of hop right in. A couple quick disclaimers. As always, this is not a suicide prevention line. This is not a crisis hotline. If you're feeling like you're in crisis or distressed, please call those appropriate numbers. And I'm in my daughter's nursery and just realized that my white noise is on super loud. So I'm going to fix that. And we're going to go ahead and start to hop in. So Val and Chris, so good to see y'all. I loved seeing you in person. Welcome back to our live streams.
Thank you, Liz. It was great seeing you and meeting you. You were everything I thought you would be. And Chris, it's just good seeing you anytime.
Well, I was going to say, so you and Liz hadn't met in person.
No,
Oh, I didn't know that.
no, the only one that I had met was you and Ethan.
I know, because for us it was it was reunited. And then Katie, I had met in person before. I'd met everybody in person, but I haven't seen y'all in like a couple years. It was so surreal because people don't know the backstory, but we see each other weekly as lead and national advocates. So for us, it's like, it's surreal because you're like, yeah, I've been seeing you, but it's very different to see you in person. But yeah, I mean, everybody, welcome to this live stream. So I don't know if like Tommy or anybody's gonna be able to jump on at some point, but really what I hope everybody gets out of today is we just want to make it kind of a community space. So we just had obviously the 2022 Denver OCD Conference. It's the IOCDF's annual conference, and it was back in person. And we're going to talk about that and process like some of the stuff that we learned from going to talks or being part of special interest group meetings. We have a keynote, all these different activities. I'd love in the chat, if you went to the conference, like what are some of the things you saw, or what were some of the parts of the conference you absolutely enjoyed? And then if you didn't go to the conference, any questions you have about the conference. And then we also have a bunch of pre-submitted questions, OCD-based questions. So you have 3 people with lived experience. 2 of us are clinicians. So we can also answer your general OCD questions as well. So it's just going to be a cool community spot to all hang out, to talk. And like I said, it was so good seeing the 2 of y'all in person. So it's good to see you. How about you, Val? How you feeling? How you feeling about life?
Oh, well, I'm excited, especially coming off such a high. Uh, I have to kind of watch not having the after conference blues, but it's not there. Um, but I'm excited. I'm ready to go. Um, and it was just amazing seeing everybody and being able to give hugs and to physically see all those Facebook fans, or I shouldn't say Facebook friends that I have never met before. So it was exciting. Yeah. So looking forward to what's next. We still have a half a year to go.
Well, I don't know
So
how y'all feel. I mean, you mentioned it, Valerie. I have such conference blues, man. Like, I don't know how to explain. Somebody else was saying it, so I'm not going to take credit for it because it definitely wasn't my analogy. But they said like they feel almost like it was somebody at the conference was saying this, that they almost feel like an alien like in the world because they think and feel so differently than everybody else having obsessive compulsive disorder. But at the conference, it's like you found your people. And for a while there, for like 4 days, you're in this like hub with other people. So to me, it feels like a cool summer camp where you're understood. I don't know if anybody else feels that way.
For sure.
Certainly.
I feel like I don't know. I think in general, we were talking about this today, Chris, right? Is like there's this like life after treatment understanding for a lot of us where like after we get treatment, we have to rebuild our life and our identity. And a lot of us, like, we don't really have hobbies, or we don't have a lot of things that we like figured out that were fun because we were dealing with OCD. And like that took away not just our free time, but time that we should have been doing lots of other important things as well. And for me, I think the OCD community is kind of my hobby, in the sense, not say a hobby, but it's like it's my people. It like fills that void of loneliness, of emptiness that I feel like kind of exists otherwise, where I feel like you just said, like seen and heard and understood. But also it doesn't, I don't know if y'all feel this way, but like it's not like when we get together, all we do is talk about OCD. Like it's also like y'all have become my best friends, like people that I can trust, people that I love and care about. And it's not just an OCD relationship.
How about you,
Yeah,
Val? Like, how did you feel being there?
kind of what Liz was saying. There is a relationship beyond the OCD being advocates, and it's hard not to go, oh, I have to wait until 2023 to see everybody again. At the San Francisco conference, it's going to be in 2023. So I try not to focus so much on that. And I'm kind of focusing, we still have a half a year to go and what all we can do. But there is some kind of little letdown in there, in how to not let it go too far is kind of what I'm concentrating on. I miss you guys already. It's only been a few weeks.
I know it's surreal because it feels like it ended yesterday, but it really didn't. But I like what both of you are saying is like even though we know each other outside of just this space, it's like we have that all in common. I don't know how you all felt, but what I always like, because I help a lot with Kyle King with the young adult, and I actually got a really sweet Instagram message about it. But I think what I always like seeing is people who did not know each other walking into a group or walking into a talk and then interacting with each other. And then like at the Saturday night social or like Sunday morning or whenever you like see those people and they're acting like they're besties, and they've all met at the conference and now they're like super close. So that's my favorite part of the conference, is just seeing people connect with each other and like make lifelong friendships. Because I've met, Tom, I met him 5 years ago, 7 years ago, I can't even remember, but it's like you meet at the conference and then you kind of connect outside of the conference and become close. So I don't know, I mean, what was some of the community building that y'all witnessed that just kind of makes you feel good? Because that's what makes me feel good.
Oh, I didn't know this one. Well, what made me feel good, like you say, was meeting everybody and able to say hello and how you doing, and like I say, hug you or touch you or uh, just be around that support, because it is so very important. It's so you for myself, I got so much energized, from it. And I was just excited to see everyone. And I was also very humbled by the experience too. Like, when somebody would come up to me, it was very humbling. Um, but also it kind of put me in a space too, and put me back to feeling, not that I have a responsibility, but I have a responsibility uh, also. So, you just can't replace that in-house support. It's there, and we just have to draw on it, until next time. But I think for me, that was probably the most encouraging thing that I personally took from the conference, was just all the new friendships and all the faces, you know. So
Yeah, I see Kim Vicenti in the chat, and she's an advocate as well. It was great seeing her in person and just hearing about her son and her and all she's doing as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Yes.
I have to say, Chris, I want to echo what you're saying. And Val, is just like it felt so good just seeing this community together and live and watching people connect with one another. And I think that's what this is all about. These live streams, and sorry, you guys, if my camera gets shaky and whatnot, I'm feeding a baby, but, it's one of those things where there is no community like this one. And I feel so blessed that we have the International OCD Foundation and the opportunity for there to be this like bigger platform to create a community so that a lot of us can benefit from it, because I really think the benefit is profound. And to me, I always tell people, like, treatment is critical. You have to get in treatment, but you also have to find a community and individuals who can support you in a healthy way. And I love that about the conference. It's not just people with OCD where we come and give each other reassurance, or right. It's also like we're building a community, but a healthy community. And we end up encouraging each other to seek treatment, to be accountable, to do better. And it's pretty awesome. But what I love, I've been going to the conference now for well over 15 years, and I have seen individuals who I met as young kids grow up to be just these beautiful adults that still come and still have their friends, and you watch them grow up together, and it is just so heartwarming. And I know for a lot of us, we wish we had that. And so it's so cool to see that happening.
I love
That's
seeing
how
all
I
the
felt
kids.
when I ran into the girls that were in the children's version.
Yes.
Yeah, and, it's like, how did you get so tall and so beautiful? It's only been 5 years. So I totally agree with you. I think it is very important to have a support group, and also a group that is also trying to push us in the right direction, and that is advocating that hope is possible when healing and the treatment is there. It's not just the buddy thing, but also keeping the movement going in a sense.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is the kids, I mean, it was really cool. They did something awesome at the conference. They had like a middle school, a high school track, the young adult track. And when I was walking by seeing the high school room, it was like just a bunch of kids. They had apparently somebody gave them like superhero capes. And so they had these like red superhero capes, and they were like running around. And some of them came to like the young adult game night, and it was like trivia, and it's like they're running around in their capes and stuff. And one of the kids, he was probably like 13, 14, he was in a talk, and afterwards I was talking to him, and I'm like, he had his little friends and stuff, and I'm like, oh, did you guys like know each other or like meet before the conference or previous conferences? And they're like, no, we met like 2 days ago, and they were like besties already. So it's just, I think there's something that when you walk in a room with somebody else who's like lived your struggle, gone through your struggle, found it so difficult, confusion, finally getting treatment, that whole process, there's something about like that connection where you just get each other. And because you get each other, it's like, oh my God, like we already have that foundation. So I think just like, besides obviously the people that I've met, it's like seeing those connections at the conference always makes me feel like good. I'm like, they're going to leave feeling less alone. And that's what I heard a lot from people, like their feedback, less alone. Val, can you tell us a little bit about like the faith? I know there was a faith and OCD special interest group meetup, a meeting and everything. I know Katie wanted to talk about it and you to talk about it. So maybe just update everybody when you're at the conference, like anything faith and OCD updated that you thought was pretty awesome or excited for people to know.
Well, I think we were both excited about the turnout. All the people that showed up and have an interest in being part or advocating for the faith and OCD section or conference. I don't think anything in particular that we um, are have not discussed before. We talked a lot about the website and what it means to be an advocate and how you can help, and how we're so welcoming to everyone and that everybody's voice is important. And it was more, I think, of just having a conversation kind of with everybody. And once again, going back to what you were saying, getting familiar with everyone outside of, your Facebook or your Zoom. But it was great. But I think Katie and I were more encouraged about the number of people that showed up, and the new people, that want to get aboard. And I'm sure she took names and, numbers and all that kind of good stuff.
Was there anything kind of like in those conversations that there was something you overwhelmingly heard? Because I know obviously there's people where like they've gone to like church versus therapy, or their faith doesn't back up therapy, or there's scrupulosity that's invading, their relationship with the Lord. Like what was some of maybe the conversations or the bonding that you saw in that special interest group?
I think for most of us that being sick is not a sin, and that we're getting more comfortable uh, um, in our own places of worship with being a little bit more vocal. Some of us, there's a great need still to include our clergymen in the conversation. A lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot, some people are definitely seeing the difference. Some people are still struggling with, having OCD and being a person of faith. So that was very endearing, I think, to be able to encourage everyone that, um, you're not, you're just sick like anyone else. It's a medical condition like anyone else. But the main conversation was having the need for information in our perspective, places of worship, and also being being secure in ourselves that uh, we're sick and not sinful. But those were the two main conversations.
Yeah, no, I mean, all of that's super important. And I think what's great about, if people aren't familiar with the conference, there's all these special interest groups that I saw were put in the comments from Skyla. And so it's like being involved with like-minded people in almost like a community in a community, and the different things that you all noticed. And I think what's great about the Faith and OCD special interest group is there's so much diversity in the faith. So it's like, I think sometimes people are like, well, I don't know if there'll be people that are also Buddhist or different face, but it sounds like there's a great representation and it was a good meeting.
Yes, and in reality, there has been a plus, I think, for it. I know for myself to be able to see another person's perspective and respect that, but we also have this common bond across the line that we're all dealing with some struggles because of our faith, but it is definitely a plus to have everybody out there. And I tell you, that community is raring to go. I think they're at a point now where we're finally being heard, and we're going to use this opportunity and let's get started. So,
Okay. Energy, I
mhm,
love it. And for you, Liz,
yes,
you're involved in so much. I know McLean hosted all the speakers. So there's like a big speakers event. I know also obviously you're on the board and all the and also you were at the advocate meeting at the conference. Is there anything that kind of came out of those meetings, or any other meetings, or things that you're involved that you're super excited to share?
Yeah, I thanks for bringing this up, because I think that we were talking about it today, but I am just so inspired and excited by the advocacy movement. I mean, seeing what has happened in the past 5 years, or I remember when I first started talking about OCD, people didn't really even know what the acronym stood for. And yeah, we still have a lot of work. Like there's so much to do, but sometimes I think we get caught up in what people get wrong, but we don't necessarily see all the progress that's been made. And to me, I think it was a pretty full circle, heartwarming moment to be in a room full of advocates where there was just so many people with this passion and desire to tell their own story in an effort to help others. And that is something that I think, candidly, when I first started advocacy work, was my dream, was that one day other people would be willing to do the same, and that we'd start to break away the stigma. And to me, just seeing so many young people and so many people be willing to talk about OCD now where they probably wouldn't have before, I think that's evidence that work that we're doing is working, and that stigma is starting to be shattered and starting to decrease. And that's something that I'm just so proud of, but I also am just so inspired by. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited to see our future advocates, to see what they do, because it is just incredible seeing some of the art, some of the stories, the creative ways that people advocate but also their vulnerability and their willingness to speak out. And so I'm excited. Like, look at this summer. Love that.
I
My
know.
story got published on a blog today. That's huge. Like, all of these
Oh,
things are so exciting and so fun. And actually, we have a really fun announcement and exciting thing that's going to come up on OCD Week this year, where we're going to be able to feature so many new advocates. So we're really excited about it. Definitely be on the lookout for that. But that's what I'm most inspired by. But Chris, it's your turn. So tell us a little bit about your conference experience. What inspired you? What you loved, and what is something that's weighing on your heart as you come home?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think one of the things that first kicked off for me was the BDD special interest group. And there's I'm not going to say her name because I don't know if she wants to be, I didn't ask for permission first, but she's from Canada, and her passion is to make sure that when people go and get plastic surgery in Canada, that they have to first do a screening for body dysmorphic disorder first. So that can be kind of an inkling to both the surgeon as well to the person that potentially maybe you're there for BDD and image-based obsessions versus like actual like preference. And so we kind of brainstormed about that, and it was good just to see so many people interested in BDD, and that's such a passion of mine. So I think that that was a great way for me to kick off and just kind of put some of the projects. There was a talk that Scott Granite and I did for BDD clinicians, like an advanced training, and it was a really well turned out and gotten a lot of positive feedback. So I'm just happy to see there's still such a strong like BDD community in the OCD community. Also, the trauma and grief and OCD special interest group had a meeting that was really, really well attended as well, led by Nathaniel Van Kirk. And so what was great about that is we just heard, I think the main thing that came out of that meeting was just this real big desire for more clinicians to be better at able to tell the difference, because when clients are both experiencing PTSD or trauma and OCD, sometimes the therapists are misdiagnosing it or not communicating. So I know that that was a big passion project. And then sort of what you were talking about, Liz, at the start, is there's people there that didn't have like a diagnosis of PTSD, but they feel very lost. They're better from the OCD, but they feel disconnected from their identity. They don't feel like a whole person. They feel lost. And so I feel like that special interest group gave them like a soft landing page that I was really passionate about. I couldn't be at the LGBTQ special interest group because we had a talk. We were at our, which I'm going to ask you about in a second. We had our advocacy talk of how to spread the word of real OCD. But shout out to Alexandra and to Justine that led it. It was well attended and just excited about that. And then shout out to Kyle, who ran the young adult stuff. But it was just cool to see a bunch of young adults like become friends. And like I said, I got some Instagram messages of people are like, thanks for doing this. Like I met my friend and stuff. So those were some of the big things. But I'll start with you, Val, and then you, Liz. Like Val, we did a talk and I felt that you're super vulnerable and open up about advocacy. And one thing that I really was touched by your conversation was, and Katie, I felt said it as well. I think Liz and I were kind of like thrown into advocacy, but with your story and with Katie's stories, there was a lot of self-hesitation, a lot of fear, and it was like coming out comfortably until you felt good about that. So what was some of the feedback you received, or some of the audience, or just your experience about talking about advocacy and your journey at the conference?
I got a lot of, I think I've gotten all positive feedback. I haven't checked everything, there might be a message or two, but very supportive. I know for me, especially when it came to my own personal talk and my desire to see the diversity numbers increase, there was a lot of hesitation that I didn't realize I had until, it was time to do my speech. Because actually, and I kind of feel bad in a little ways, because I wanted to wear something a little bit more ethnic, but I started second guessing myself. And then afterwards, I kind of thought, oh, that shouldn't be, why am I doing that? But it is, um, it's not an issue because I'm very comfortable in my skin, but it was just something that I thought about because I want to make sure that I'm relatable um, to everyone. And so that was kind of an interesting personal observation that I seen for myself. And I think there was a little disappointment in it for even feeling like that, because I felt the speech was well received. And, typically I kind of like to write down stuff, and look at my paper more often and all those kind of things. That's why I chose not to stand because I didn't want to take my paper. I have these 3 bullet points and I'm just going to do it, authentically and whatever comes. And so I was very pleased. I got a lot of feedback from a lot of women of color that were there uh, for the need and the desire to to get involved, to get more involved in, where do we go from here, those kind of things. So um, it was well worth it. And also, like I said, I learned a lot about myself in those few moments. But like I said, it was definitely like coming full circle, uh, knowing where I started, just like everybody else out there as an advocate or somebody coming to a conference for the first time and saw a need. And I was really excited because I seen all this information, the resources and the therapists and the movie with the kids and all of this stuff that was going on, and I just wanted to be a part of it, and I didn't know how to express that beyond feeling a little anger or disappointment, uh, not only in myself but in the world in general. Um, so it's been a learning time for me, and I'm learning not to concentrate on numbers because I'm focusing more on what we're doing behind the scenes that people might not necessarily see. And I think that's where a lot of the progress will stem from that. And so I was excited. And like I said, I didn't get any negative feedback that I have ran across yet. But I'm open to it. Thick skin, I'm open to it. And I figured that's how we grow. That's how we
There's
learn.
no negative feedback for you, Val.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What I wanted to add, Val, too, is
Thank you, Liz. I'm sorry.
no, I was gonna say, Val, for you, it's like, you're kind of like leading the charge, obviously. Like, you've put yourself out there very, very publicly as a advocate both of color and of age. And that's not always normal. That's not what people always see. So I always think to give yourself self-compassion because you're kind of treading on areas that haven't been paved before. You're the one kind of paving the way. So there isn't really a manual for you at all times. So you're kind of paving it. But I think that your voice is so important. Dr. Darlene Davis was part of the diversity talk, and I think she just said some really, really good things about trying to get more clinicians of color and how there isn't like she was saying like we're entering a space that isn't already developed. So there's a lot of kind of like learning curve. And so definitely give yourself compassion for that.
Thank you. I will. The other part I was struggling with, I'm just confessing. You know what? I didn't want to feel like I was old, if that makes sense. Even though I am, I mean, that is who I am. It is what it is, as they say. But that was another concern, that I wanted to be able to relate not only to a older crowd, but also a younger one, because I think that's where most of the work is going to take place, because we're getting old. And so, we got to pass that uh, banner to the next person. So, but I learned a lot, like I said, in those few days about myself.
I would say too, Val, like I think for me, I look at it a different way. Is like everybody needs to be touched and everybody needs to be heard. First of all, you're such a young spirit. So to me, there's no such thing as like old. But and look, you and your man were dancing and staying out with the best of us. So but what I was gonna say is like people need to hear and see themselves, whether they're young, whether they're older, whether they're, faith. I mean, all of this kind of stuff is because everything that you provided for at the conference, like people needed to hear it and to see it. And I always think like we're all advocates because we represent individuals willing to open up and to share our story and to stomp stigma and put ourselves out there. and everybody believes in all of us, and you included. And so the second guessing self is kind of normal, but just knowing that, you know, I always love looking aside and seeing you as one of the people by my side. So it was awesome to
Oh,
see you.
ditto. Thank you.
Liz, for you, how about our talk on advocacy? I mean, I saw so much hunger. I already see it in our chat right now with Eric and with Summer, but how did you feel about the advocacy talk at the conference and the people that are hungry for
Yeah,
that?
same. I loved it. And, you know, Val, I was so moved by you and your story and your willingness and vulnerability. And I think it's a reminder of how important it is for all of us. Like, I loved hearing from everyone that they appreciate vulnerability and that they appreciate when we're real and honest about our struggles. And I think that's important. It's important when we think about advocacy to remember that, like, the three of us are not sitting here as advocates who are cured and have no issues anymore, right? We still have
Yeah.
struggles, we still have difficulty. And I think that's a really important message, because I think sometimes people look at us and think, oh, well, you've got it together, or you're in a different place than I am, or than I can be. And that's not true, right? The point of us being advocates is that we've wanted to be able to share that overcoming, managing OCD, having a successful treatment outcome is possible for anyone, right? And that really, like, I always, when I give kind of talks, I always end with, my story shouldn't be the exception, it should be the norm, right? Accessing treatment and being able to manage your symptoms shouldn't be this like rare thing that only few people are able to obtain, right? It should be something that is standard across the board. And I'm excited. I was excited to see so many advocates that were hungry. I was excited to hear advocates say they appreciate vulnerability and people being real, because I think that also gives hope to others that they can be advocates, and that, you know, you don't have to be this like perfect person or this perfect model to be doing advocacy. And then I also just love what it means, right? The more we're involved, the louder we are, the more we're going to increase access to care, the more people are going to be appropriately educated on OCD. Like, it is all a ripple effect. And so we can just do so much more as a community than we can as individuals. And so I'm just grateful to be a part of it, and it's exciting. So Chris, what about you?
Yeah, and then I want to circle back to something you said. I think the one thing that I took from I had people come up to me after the talk, and one of the things that they said was that they really appreciate it, and they obviously look up to all the work that we're doing, but they don't feel like they could do it. And I was thinking, like, one of the things that I don't know if we talked about in our talk, but one thing that we got to figure out a way to present is, I think people aren't giving themselves enough credit. If you're doing if you have to do a presentation in class and you choose to do a presentation on OCD, that's advocacy. If you're in the waiting room and you're wearing like an OCD kit wristband somebody was talking about, and somebody's like, what is that from? And you're like, oh, I have OCD and I'm a grassroots advocate. That's advocacy. If you are open with like your family, like, I'm sorry, I can't make it, I'm really struggling with obsessions and compulsions, and so I'm going to try again next time, that's advocacy. I think sometimes people think advocacy is only if you're like doing a live stream, but advocacy is so important on the grassroots level. So I think that a lot of times people see us talking about it in these presentations and see the things that we're doing. And that was the thing I took away from our talk, and is how to get started. Like, let people know that, look, like, you know, I always love your story, Val, of like, you know, using teal to paint your toenails. Like, that was advocacy, you know. And sometimes it's like, somebody, you know, there was a talk that I was doing and somebody was saying, look, like, I want to open up about having intrusive thoughts, but I don't feel like I can do it because of my job. Or somebody was saying, I'm in a custody battle with my ex-husband, and I have intrusive thoughts of harming our kids. So if I open up about my OCD, that could put the outcome of the case like in danger. And so I always want to tell people, like, some people are talking about, you can be an anonymous advocate. You can create graphics that you put out there from an Instagram page that you don't attach your name. So, you know, I'm always kind of feel that way as well. So maybe Val, quickly, just, you know, because I think that story is not new to me, but it might be new to people. What would you say to advocates that might be a little bit scared to do something on a big scale? How can they do something on any scale to start at their advocacy journey?
Well, when I started with polishing my toenails, it really started for a couple of reasons. One, like I said, to make sure that whenever I look down at my toenails and seeing the color teal, which is the recognizable, sometimes I got to slow down, recognizable color across the board for OCD, uh, to remind me to keep moving forward. But it was also a way to advocate, and nobody knew what was going on but me, unless somebody would ask me about the color, and then I would be able to give them my spiel. But so that's how it kind of started, with just me knowing I'm advocating. I'm wearing this teal on my toes, and nobody knows I have OCD, but I do, and on and on and on and on in my head. And then it got to a point where I decided, well, not only can I not be wear it on my toes, but I couldn't be faceless. And that still remains a biggie for me, to bring more faces into this community. But just even myself, whenever I think about advocating, I think about, like you say, it's the simple things. It's not always the big things. And that conversation of polishing my toenails led to different conversations, which is going to lead to a whole big, I hope, um, campaign during OCD week uh, this year. But I found too that a lot of the advocates that were there became very vulnerable and were sharing and had the desires, like you say, and just don't know that they're already advocating. They're very much like me. How do we take it to that next step? And so, like you say, everything that you do is really just showing up as being an advocate. Because, like I said, an advocate simply means one who agrees. And so, you take it from there. Tiny steps can turn into big steps, or big steps happens also. My story don't necessarily have to be theirs. Uh, like I say, theirs can completely go to a whole new level. So like
Well, I
me,
know.
I'm personally a fan of the stamps,
Oh yeah,
the notes. Yeah, I think that's a
not
great
alone
idea,
notes. They're
because
brilliant.
I think about how wonderful it would have been for me at a younger age, just to be able to think that somebody was thinking about how I was doing. So it's things like that.
No, exactly. I mean, I think the Not Alone Notes is such a success story, right? Like they just recognize that there's people in treatment that aren't getting, during the holidays or at any time getting any recognition from being there. And they probably feel alone and lost. And it was two young advocates that started Not Alone Notes, and the things that they've been able to create is incredible. And hopefully they'll be around to do something for OCD Awareness Week. They're always so great and creative.
Yeah.
Liz, what are some things that you feel that people who maybe they came to our talk and felt inspired, but are like Val or Katie said during the talk, are kind of in that hesitant stage? What are some things that you feel are good, like baselines or things to kind of start with advocacy that might not feel too big and overwhelming for somebody that wants to start out?
Yeah, I love what you just said, Chris, which is that advocacy doesn't have to be you go on national television and tell your story, and I think that's really important, is that the way we advocate might be, sending a brochure to our school, or, encouraging our psychiatrists to put IOCDF brochures in their waiting room, because they may not do behavioral therapy, or right, but they certainly might come across a lot of patients, or asking your kid's pediatrician to, put some of the pamphlets in their waiting room. And so I think it's really important to know that advocacy doesn't have to be telling the details of your story on day one. And I actually don't recommend that people do that. When people ask me questions like, well, when should you disclose in a relationship if you have OCD? My response is like, that really depends, right? But even if you disclose, you're going to disclose slowly, and you're going to see what kind of trust you build with that person before you disclose more, right? If you're at the grocery store and you're checking out and somebody says, "How are you?" They don't actually want to know your full life story, right? That's like they want small talk. If you stop and say like, "Well," and you go into your full life story and they're like, "I have 10 people to check out. You got to hurry up," right? It's it's like it's situational and what makes sense. And I think advocacy is the same thing. It would be really strange for us to say, hey, the first time you're talking about your story, let's do it on this huge platform. And the reality is that the internet creates a huge platform, right? The second you put it out there, it's out there. And so I always tell people, dip your toe in it. Think about ways that you can advocate with your own family members, with your own friends, and how you want to share your story. And then you slowly will kind of know. And I'm a big believer that advocacy is a calling, and that you'll know when you're called at certain levels and it will feel right. If it feels forced or it feels pressured, I would encourage you to slow down. Because again, it's more important that you're doing it at the timing that makes sense for you and when you're comfortable than because you feel like it's what you're supposed to be doing. The second piece I'll say that I would love for us to talk a little bit about, Chris, and I would love your perspective, is what does advocacy mean to you? Mike Janicki and I have talked about this for years, and we did a panel on it many, many years ago, where we actually talked about advocacy kind of being the last leg of treatment and being a place where so much healing happens after you've gained treatment, right? Sometimes the healing doesn't stop at treatment. There's more that needs to happen to kind of close the loop, so to say. And I don't know, I know for me, advocacy, y'all hear me use a lot of my random quotes, but it really helped me turn my pain into a purpose, right? Where it was like, okay, I got treatment to be able to address the pain, to not be in pain anymore, but I still needed to do something with all that displaced pain that I felt for so long. And advocacy allowed me to for it to have a place that was meaningful and purposeful and actually allowed something good to come out of my diagnosis. And to me, I needed it. And I would love to hear from you, Chris, if you agree with that. And then also, of course, for you, what you felt from the talk.
Yeah, no, I would say for me, I think Ethan summed it up the best. Actually, it was at our first, when it was called the Ambassador Program meeting. And when he was talking about why he advocates, he said, like, I have to make sense of everything I've gone through. And advocacy has been the only thing that's ever taken all the hurt and pain and struggle I've gone through and made it make sense. And so that's how I really feel. Like when I was done with treatment, I remember saying, I'm never going to go back to school. I'm done. I want to go back and work in entertainment. I love that field. And I went back and got a job in entertainment. And I found myself so hollow and empty. And like everybody else around me was like loving it and having the time of their lives. And we were at the Oscars and Golden Globes and everything. And I was just lost and so lost. And that's why I think the live stream on kind of like what's after treatment is so important, is because I just was so confused. I was like, this should be exciting. Like I got better and this should be it. And when I started advocating, I don't advise everybody to do it the way I did it. I was on the Montel Williams show like 2 weeks after my treatment ended. But in retrospect, I mean, the advocacy made sense of that. And for me, it's like we still have a problem getting people into treatment, getting people proper care, getting them the correct treatment. I mean, those are things that if somebody has cancer, like they go to their doctor, they find out if they need radiation or they need any other kind of intervention, and they're on a path. It's not this like 14 to 17 years. And so for me, what the advocacy does is like, I love seeing kids at the conference. I love seeing kids in treatment. It means that they didn't have to go like a decade or two struggling before they finally get a diagnosis. So I always am a big believer in like, leave the world better than the way that you came in. And so for our community, if I know that people are going to have more research, more options, more treatment, and a shorter time from first symptom to treatment, like I'll be good with my advocacy journey for sure. And I have to say, I've never painted my nails. Probably when I was a kid, I had sisters. I probably did. But I know Jeff Szymanski did it last year. I don't know if you're like a nail person, Liz, but I will do it this year if other people do it with me. I
I'm
will
in.
totally do the teal
I'll do
thing.
it. Yeah. OCD week.
Yeah, I don't think
OCD.
I've ever done it in like a long time, so I don't even know what it'd be like to have teal nails, but I'll do it. I'll do it, Val.
Oh, thank you.
Oh my
Before I forget, and before Katie would kill me for not mentioning this, one of the purest, most beautiful moments came during the SIG meeting for OCD and Faith. And one of the participants who was thinking about advocacy, um, and I believe her name was Denise, I'm not quite sure, but she had been influenced by Katie talking about running towards your values, that she wrote this song. and the song was magical.
Oh.
And she had recorded it on her phone, and she found the courage to share it, and that was a magical moment. And I'm so glad I thought about it because it's so worth repeating. And then she shared it again during our Zoom SIG meeting yesterday. But it was so magical because it was so pure, and it just, I think, took everybody's breath away. And so I think she said, because a lot of people wanted to get copies of it, I think she's going to send it to Katie where it can be posted on the website or something. But that was an awesome moment. One of those once in a lifetime things that happens because we're all in a support group. So
That is so awesome. People have so much more talent than me. I'm jealous. People writing songs, raps, everything. I think it's amazing.
I know.
Well, I know we have Summer in the chat. She just got an article published. So if you could throw that up there for people to see, Skyla at I Can Never Do Your Time, 7:45 East Coast time. I mean, that's what's so cool about this talk today, and just like people sharing the things that they're doing. So congratulations on getting it published, Summer. And then I know you were going to say something, Liz, but I saw your message, Skyla. If you want to get involved in the advocacy program, there is an advocacy page on the IOCDF website. You can also become a grassroots advocate. And if you sign up, you get the Advocates in Action email, and that comes out and that gives you opportunities. I know a lot of times around Awareness Week, especially, there's different options that people can get involved with. So I think that that gives people things to do and to put their pain into purpose, like Liz was saying.
All right, let's hop into questions because I know we have a bunch, but I just want to say thank y'all to everyone who joined, and a huge thank you to IOCDF for hosting the conference, for hosting these live streams, and really for creating this community that is just evident across the board, means so much to so many people.
Yeah, well, I have a couple more questions because I want to ask about the keynote. Val, what did you think about the keynote?
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was important, especially for families. I think that's the first time I've seen a group of a family unit talking about their experience. I was fascinated. I thought the kids showed a lot of courage, and it gave me a different perspective to try to be mindful in my own household because I'm the one that suffers from OCD, but OCD is a family issue. So I loved it.
Yeah, and I think what was great is just seeing that father-son dynamic, like both of them going through it together, struggling during the pandemic, and both of them being able to kind of reach out to each other. Because I think a lot of times, if we're the only one in our family with OCD, we feel very solo through it. And I just thought it was great to see like the dad had to step up his care, admit he had OCD and start getting help, and model that behavior for his son. So how did you feel about their dynamic, Val, just like them being there for each other?
What was that?
How did you feel about the dynamic between the son and the father kind of connecting over their both having OCD and really supporting each other through treatment during the pandemic?
I think it was great. And I think it spoke to so many issues about, the father being informed. He knew what to look for. He knew how to help his child because he had that experience himself. And I think, too, going back to what you said, because the son seeing his father modeling, I can get better, and this is what I need to do. And, there was hope, love, encouragement, all of those things were kind of wrapped up in one. And to see this in this young child, and also to see it in the 11-year-old, seeing what his sibling and his father was doing was a lesson about, so many things, striving, moving forward, staying positive, servitude. I think we forget about that sometimes, that always say is not your size, it's your service. And to think about even sitting up there on that stage, how many people that family reached, in just that
1,500 and more,
few
yeah.
moments. And like I said, to somebody that's been dealing with this for a while, it gave me a whole different perspective, especially with my husband sitting there, thinking about, I have to remember too, that it's not just about me in a sense, but it affects all of us and how we react and uh, to our own struggles, how important that could be. But I loved it.
And Liz,
I probably was sitting up there with tears and admiration and all those kind of things. Yeah.
Liz, what I wanted to ask you real quick about the keynote is, your sister and you spoke at our family group that we run, and like Val was saying, is like there was a young son who didn't have OCD. The brother, I know Michelle Whitkin also hosted a siblings talk, and I know that obviously the Charlotte and oh my God, name slipping, Vanessa.
Yes.
The Bear sisters. Yes. Totally slipped for a second. I was talking to Charlotte. They've done a lot of stuff for siblings. I think Val said a good point is like, I think, and maybe you could talk about your personal experience. We get so invested in the OCD. And when I used to go to the conferences in the beginning, it was more so for like therapists and us. And I've seen it grow to family members. Why do you think the conferences, why do you think that's good? Like involving like husbands, wives, siblings, etc., as well as seeing that in the keynote. But why do you think that's important to have that at the conference and talk about like the other people impacted?
Yeah, I think it's critical. I think that, y'all see me holding a baby, right? It's like OCD, when we're living with OCD, it affects the whole family unit in different ways, right? Whether it's our live stream next week's going to talk about perinatal OCD. And so, yeah, we're going to talk a lot about how OCD impacts our life in the perinatal period. So, pregnancy and postpartum, but we're also going to talk about how OCD impacts our kids, impacts our spouses, impacts our family members. And I know for me, when I was struggling at a young age, when I was 15, my sister was greatly impacted. Her and I are 14 months apart, and my sister had to kind of become a caretaker overnight for me. She had to have a totally different role than what anyone would expect a 15-year-old sibling role would be in a household. And the reality is that oftentimes the people that are recognized are the individual with OCD, and then sometimes also the parents. But the siblings are often not recognized, and the OCD plays a huge role on them. My dad and I, when we do talks together, we always talk about how OCD impacts the entire family unit. It never impacts just one individual. And I think the more we can include everyone, it will allow them to get the support that they need, but also be able to support their loved one appropriately. If you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not, my mom always says, like, for her, it was so critical to go to support groups and have other parents who understood and who also were dealing or living with a child with OCD. And I think the same goes for siblings. It's often a forgotten unit when it comes to mental health treatment and support, but it's a critical one.
Absolutely. Well said. I wanted to ask you, I know obviously you and Grayson, I know I was there too, but you and Grayson did a really impactful live stream on, adding kind of like the gold standard of ERP. And it was so popular. I think we did a part 2 or 3 because it's just people kept having questions. But I know you did it live. How was that to roll that out to the in-person community? And what was some of the feedback from that?
Oh, it was so fun. It was a packed room, and it was awesome because it was such a mix of clinicians and individuals. And really, one of the things that we're talking about is what we've talked about on these live streams is the difference between kind of standard or textbook ERP versus ERP as a lifestyle, right? Really understanding the concepts, understanding why you did it. And what I loved about John Grayson is I think so many people think of John as like, oh, this guy who does like extreme ERP, right? And he is an ERP behavioralist through and through. But I love how honest John is about how critical and important it is for you to have rapport, for you to have a relationship, and for the patient to be bought into the ERP process. And so he talked a lot about how he's done treatment sometimes for 4 months before they start any ERP because you need to do readiness and patients need to be ready. And I think it's really important sometimes for us to not just like grab this concept and see it in one way and run with it. It's really how do we tailor ERP to each person, but also when we're the individuals receiving ERP, how do we ensure that we are actually understanding what we're doing and why? I want us to be skeptics. Because I want us to understand things, right? I've learned this a lot with having a baby is that there's all sorts of methods in place, right? So people will say things like, baby's back is best when you put your baby to sleep. Okay, well, like, yeah, that's important. But what's more important is that I understand why. why is putting your baby on their back best? Why is that important practice? And why, like how does that keep them safer? Why? Because once I understand the why, I'm probably not going to put my baby anyway except on their back, right? Because I understand that it can be really dangerous, right? If they're not on their back. And I think that's so important with OCD. And that's what I love about the conference, is that it's an opportunity not to just learn, and we're not just, nobody just says like, oh, here's how you do something, here's how you don't do something. It's, we're spending so much time talking about the why and helping people understand. And guess what? If you don't totally get it, you can go grab that person in the hallway and say, hey, I just heard your talk and I'm stuck on this, or I'm confused about this, and let them really break it down for you. And that's so cool, because I think sometimes ERP, is explained in a nutshell in your 45-minute sessions that you get once a week, and you need more. And so it's an opportunity, the conference always is, for there to just be so much more.
I'm so happy you got to do the talk. That's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
I wanted to say it again.
Tell us about your other talk.
Yeah, well, what I was going to say is one of the talks that I really enjoyed was Alec Pollard. He was the last talk that I was able to attend at the conference. He's always hilarious. But he did a talk really about how to get parents involved if their loved one isn't open to treatment. And I think that what I saw in that room from everybody attending is there's a lot of parents out there, a lot of husbands, wives, kids, etc., who have somebody just not open to getting treatment yet. And that's okay. But it really was the talk about, what can you do instead of just sitting there and like yelling at your loved one or putting them down or making them feel like crap. Maybe you can do things in the family unit to make yourself in a healthier place to support them and help them. So I really, really enjoyed just Alec Pollard's humor, but he's coming out with a book, which I'm excited about. He didn't tell me to pitch it, but I just think it's really important. Like, there's the space trainings for clinicians, for parents of anxious children and how to support them. And he's also doing a version of that. So I think there's just such great resources. I know that Dr. Bromowitz just came out with a book, and John Hirschfield came out one with family. So I'm just happy to see that there's still resources involved. But I also enjoyed doing the diversity talk. I mean, I just think there was a lot of clinicians in it who were really came up to all of us on the panel afterwards and just said, look, like, I'm so open to what you are all saying, that we can't look past diversity when we treat our clients. We can't treat our clients like a one size fits all. And I think that's how OCD treatment was presented many years ago, is just like, hey, everybody's the same person. And so taking into account diversity was important. Skyla, if you could put up John's comment at 7:52 about having difficulty accessing treatment. What I want to get your feedback, both of you, on is shout out to Kyle King, who won our Hero Award at the conference. I don't know if either of you heard it, but what was so impactful, I think, about his speech is the way that he ended his speech. Is he said, look, like, it's great that I'm standing up here and I was able to access care, but my story should not be in the minority. This should be a normal event where people can access care and find proper treatment. And so I think it was just great of him to say, he's like, look, like, I'm up here and able to do all this advocacy and all this work and get this Hero Award because I was able to find, afford, and receive proper treatment. So what I wanted to open up to y'all is just kind of get your personal opinions, is like, why do you think so many of our community are struggling? I mean, I was reading a research article that only 10% of people who have OCD get proper treatment. So I'll start with you, Val, and then throw it to you, Liz. Is like, what do you see that, I think the conference was a good start, but what do you kind of see that you hope that continues to put out there, Val, of ways we can get more and more people to learn about their diagnosis and seek care?
Well, first of all, I think when I was watching the guys receive their awards, I think I was kind of almost sitting up there like a proud mother hen, being that I've met them virtually a few times and see the work that they have put in. But me personally, I think the future um, is going to come from the younger adults. By the way, I said in your young adult group, that was wonderful. I loved the hop around with the different therapists, and they included us, even though we were the two oldies standing out in the class. That was great. But I think
But I
that's
will have to
where
say, you and your husband, because Kyle King was talking about, so we did a talk, Liz. It was motivation stations, and there was 5 of us, and so people sat in circles, and the 5 of us moved around, and it was to help young adults with motivation and treatment. And one of the things that Kyle King had said is like, music's important, and you and your man had the best taste in music. Okay, if I could say so myself. So we were happy to have you because you could add your musical taste.
Yeah, but that was great. And like you said, to see those young people so engaged, and even being in the different circles when the different motivational parts, speeches or speakers came up and talked, to just see them all engaged, that was great. So I personally think that's where it's going to start with the younger generation, because I think they're more open. And unfortunately, what's going on within our countries and our environments, with mental health and the gun control uh, situation and all of those things is bringing it a little bit to the forefront. And I think I can see, like you say, a movement starting. Um, and I don't know other than that, beyond having information and advocating and all the things that we're doing, I don't know, uh, you know, how to bring more attention to this disorder than what we're doing. I know, like you say, there's a lot of work still to do, but I'm depending on the cows and the Tom, of the this foundation to be the future.
Well said. Liz, same question, but Skylar, could you put up Juliana's comment at 8:03? Because I think Liz and Kyle both said it. Oh no, yeah, 8:03, Juliana Horn. Yeah, I think Liz and Kyle both said it well. How about for you, Liz? I mean, I think it was really impactful what Kyle and you said.
Thank you. I just want to emphasize first, I mean, this is why I'm in the field, right? So what happened is I sought treatment when I was 15, and I was lucky enough that my parents could afford the treatment I needed. And it bothered me so much at my core to think that not everyone had access to that. And so I decided to do this for my life, right? Make my life about advocating, treating, and increasing access to care. And I think that a lot of times people will look at providers and say, why don't you accept insurance, or why aren't you doing more? And I do want to answer that and help understand why. We want to, all of us. Like, I have been working so hard to try to negotiate with insurance companies for the past, for forever, it feels like, over at McLean Houston. And you can't get responses. When you do, they offer rates that are so low you cannot keep your doors open, and you have to negotiate. And am I quitting? No, of course not. We will continue to try to see what we can do. And we are able to get a lot of insurance to accept to pay through what's called special case agreements and different options. But the reality is that it's really not providers, it's the insurance companies. It's them not understanding the value in specialty care, right? So an insurance company looks and says, oh, if you're struggling with OCD, here's a provider that says they treat OCD, right? Of course, they're going to go with who the cheapest provider is. And they don't understand that it needs to be a specialty OCD provider in order for someone to get appropriate care. And so, I think it's really, really critical that we are lobbying and thinking about true advocacy work and grassroots work that can help insurance understand the why. And because what ends up happening is they pay for treatment at multiple places, and then 5 years later, they end up paying for OCD treatment when they've already exhausted so many resources for that one client that they should have just done specialty care from the beginning. But they make them kind of exhaust all these other options first. And I think, unfortunately, what happens with that is that it isn't just about the cost. It's also about the comment earlier of accessing appropriate treatment, right? Because when you don't have the right treatment, you don't believe you can get better. You don't understand that treatment can work because you've never been exposed to that. And Chris, we talk a lot about this in our live streams, is that you have to have specialty care to be able to see a huge difference.
Thanks for clearing that up. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I think Fred Penzel did a talk at the conference, or he's done one at a previous conference, along with Allison, um, uh, who runs the Facebook group at the conferences about how to access insurance. And then Jeff Szymanski in the chat at 808. Definitely email the IOCDF at info@iocdf.org to also help through some obstacles. There's a question at 807 from Captain Cass about any other interesting research. What I also wanted to say, Jeff Szymanski talked about the plenary. So the plenary was talking about sexual orientation OCD and gender-themed OCD. So I think that was really fascinating. So if you're not familiar with the plenary, that's pretty much like the keynote for clinicians. So shout out to that, because I think there's a lot of clinicians that get stuck. Like, is this client experiencing sexual orientation OCD or gender-themed gender identity OCD, or is this really they're trying to figure out their sexual orientation? It's organic. So shout out to the plenary, because I think that was really interesting. Did y'all get to see any of the research? I know I went to the posters. Okay, so I'll say what I saw. I think a couple of the really cool things I saw at the posters, so to answer your question, Cass, if you've ever been to an IOCDF conference, they have a lot of researchers who've received grants or from the IOCDF or from other places, and they've done research, and then they put that research out on poster presentations at the conference. And so one really interesting one that I found was they were talking about like the correlation between kind of like heightened emotions and a willingness to give into compulsions, to see if like high stress and high emotions is tied in with giving into compulsions. And they found like when somebody was under distress and when somebody was really struggling, they're more likely to give into it. And that kind of makes us recognize that when we are going through different life changes and other things, it's super important to be able to recognize that heightened stress could impact the way that we give in to the OCD. Also in Alec Pollard's talk, he talked about the research that when the family unit works on themselves, so learning to take care of themselves and to make sure that their needs are being met and making sure that they aren't accommodating, that it actually helps the person be more open to treatment and get willing. And then there was some good BDD research on the Asian American community and kind of like different belief systems around BDD and how they can access care. So I don't know if there's a place, do you know, Liz, if like the research posters can be seen after the fact, or do they have to go to the actual conference?
I think you have to go to the actual conference. That's a IOCDF and Jeff question, but I'm pretty sure you have to go to the conference. But here's what I'll say, what I've learned from the conference is that I've never met a researcher or a clinician who isn't willing to share their slides or share their info. So if you see on anything through IOCDF from the brochures or whatever, something that like you missed a talk or you wish you would have learned more, just email that individual and ask them if they'd be willing to share their findings or what they presented on. And we're always happy to share knowledge in the field.
Yeah, I think that's such a good thing. So maybe info@iocdf.org, Captain Cass, you could ask about anything that you kind of wanted to see, because there was a bunch of different research all over the spectrum of different OCD medications. I know that the Research Roundtable live stream, they've done some of that as well. So that's super, super important. So obviously the next conference is in San Francisco. So Val, that's your backyard. How you feeling about it coming up there?
Yes, I can barely contain my excitement.
So that's your backyard. So what do we do before and after the conference? Because I think people don't realize a lot of people use the conference as their kind of family vacation that year. So they come early and come late. So what is something that you think everybody has to see when they're up at the conference in San Francisco?
If you go to the city, as they call it, you definitely should visit Fisherman's Wharf if you get a chance. I'm not sure that they still have the cable cars. It's been a while since I've been there. I'm about 2 hours away in Sacramento here. Definitely that, Fisherman's Wharf, and pick up some French bread. And even though I'm allergic to it, what is that soup?
Clam chowder?
Yeah. Yes. You have to do that. But definitely the wharf, if you can only go to one place, because there's so much to see and it's walkable. I think the stadium It's all in that pathway. So yeah, and Golden Gate Bridge.
Okay, I love
Even though
it.
it's not golden, it's orange, so don't be disappointed. But it's a beautiful ride across the bridge.
More
Yeah.
importantly, it'll be great weather. And just it's so fun. I want to just say this is the IOCDF does this intentionally where they try to move the conference every year to different locations that make it more accessible, right? So this obviously next year will be more focused on the West Coast with opportunities for more locals to be able to drive and get there. And then we continue to go across the country every year. And so that's really fun.
If
I think
somebody
it
is
goes back to Florida after that. So it does move around quite a bit. But if you go to the conference, please remember to take a jacket because San Francisco can be hot in the day, but come nighttime, you're going to get cold. So
Yeah.
those are my tips.
Liz, for people that haven't been to the conference, obviously there's such a community component. We have the Saturday night social with live music, with food, a chance to hang out. What's your pitch to people that are maybe like, because I think one of the things that I wanted to ask you is a two-part question, Liz. The first is I think what I saw is a lot of people had to overcome a lot of OCD to be at the conference. So I think that that's probably one of the number one things I hear from like my clients and from people in the local areas. They're just really afraid to travel. So what would be your kind of encouragement, kind of like what we saw Caroline do on social media, like overcome her fear to come to the conference? Val, you could speak on it because I know you overcame some fears to the conference. So that's my first question to you, and Val, Liz. And then second, talk a little bit, both of you, about the Saturday night social, because I think to me, if I had to describe the quintessential component of the community aspect of the conference, it's that Saturday night social.
100%. This, like, I don't know how to say it other than this. Like, I don't want to get emotional because it's just not needed tonight. But some of my best friends in my life are from this conference, and some of y'all, like, you guys are them, and I have shared moments, like some of the most important moments in my life with y'all. And I think that there's just the conference is that, like, it's just, there's no way to describe it. Like, it's not, I go to a ton of work conferences, I go to a ton of work events. That's not what this is. This is a community, and it's a community of people that you will form lifelong friendships with, people who get you on a level no one else ever will. And the social and those events, they just kind of materialize everything that the conference is and these relationships that you build. And when people say, like, well, why should I go to the conference? I like the fact that we know each other from this community and not somewhere else is actually kind of crazy. Like, it's crazy to think that just this foundation and an annual conference is what has allowed some of the most important friendships in our lives to be formed. And I can tell you, I'm not speaking for just us three. Our other advocates that couldn't make it today would tell you the exact same thing. And being able to share in such important moments in our life, and you guys are some of the first people I text and tell, and know some of these things that are just, I don't know it. I don't know how to describe it. Obviously, my emotions kind of did that for me, but the conference is not a conference, it's a community. And that's what this foundation is. And to me, there's really no greater gift we can give people in the world than that. I asked Dr. Bruce Perry, who's this incredible child trauma expert, once. He was asked, if you could fix America, how would you do it? Right? I mean, it's a pretty loaded, hard question. And his answer was, I would put front porches back on everybody's house, and we would start having communities again and neighbors. And I really believe there is so much healing power in people and in human connection. And this foundation does that for those of us with OCD. And there's really no greater gift than that.
Really well said.
What about for you, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Saturday night social, I remember the first conference I went to, because the very first conference I went to, I was so sick, I couldn't even stay for that. My OCD was so bad. I remember, obviously, Liz, I've told you a trillion times, I saw you speak there. And I got triggered by something and I couldn't stay. And look, I love me some free food. So if I was, if I didn't stay for free food, I was triggered. So I didn't. But I remember my first conference going to that Saturday night social, and I had met people at the conference, and like I don't know how to say it. It's like, obviously being gay, I've always felt like I've had to put on a face, but that aside, the second face I always had to feel like I put on is having mental health. Like every place I've gone, I've always had to put on a face, whether it was triggered from this or body dysmorphic disorder or depression. And I really was struggling a lot. That was the first year I ever spoke and at the conference. And I remember being at that Saturday night social dancing. That's the one skill I have. And I just remember for that first time, I felt like I was like taking off that mask and dropping it. And for anybody that's been able to do that in your life, like you feel seen, you feel heard, and you feel connection. And I just remember leaving that just being like, how do I bottle that? Like, how do I bottle that and drink that 364 more days? The pandemic's been terrible. There's nothing good that came out of it. The only silver lining has been like what I've loved about this community, Ethan, Liz, Jeff Szymanski, everybody, is y'all stepped up and have invited Val, myself, Tom, Katie, et cetera, along. And I think that's the one good thing is people don't have to wait 364 days to feel that way that I felt taking that mask off. We can see each other at the lives. We can see each other, all the new advocates coming out strong OCD Awareness Week. And so that Saturday night social, man, that's the one time I don't feel like mental health Chris. It feels like Chris. How for you, Val?
Oh
How did it
wow,
feel for you?
that's a lot. That's nice hearing that. Well, it started off for me with the karaoke,
Yeah.
even though I hadn't planned on it. But it was so refreshing to see all these people that you normally see on Zoom and maybe in suits and, have written all these books and have all these titles to just be humans. And the talents that they were displaying, some of them being singers, and, that was great. Saturday, I think, though, was the icing on the cake. Your mom and your sister were mom, Chris. But it allowed me to really talk with other people. As people would come to the table and you get a chance to talk. I wasn't so much into the dancing, but Melvin was. Uh, he had a ball, but I just thought that was a great way to end it. And hats off to Jeff and everybody that works behind the scenes. That it was just fun. It was fun, and I had a ball. It was hard to let it go on Sunday. With the last with it being the last day, but uh, Saturday was once again magical. And like I said, just talking to people with some of them I've never met. And, it was just like you say, the sense of community, the sense of oneness, the sense of everybody blending. There was no you or me. It was just us. And it was great.
I love that.
I was going to say, Val, and then I'm going to ask you the same question, Liz. Like for you personally, Val, I know you had to overcome some anxiety to go. How powerful was that to really kind of like live in your truth and to decide that, look, like what I want to accomplish in my life is more important than my fear?
It was great. And believe it or not, Caroline, when I seen she was going to write about it and was facing her own anxiety, it was kind of like, okay, got to do it. And it's funny because, especially those that don't know, have a fear of lying, horrible fear of lying. And when you're planning these things and you're talking about, going to Denver, a year out and all of that, is kind of okay. But then when you are approaching the day you have to fly, uh, can be challenging. But you know what? I was looking so forward to it. I think it helped with the fear. It was like, I gotta go. I need that support. It'll be okay. And all of those things. And to be honest, what really helped me when I got on the plane, I looked around and everybody was happy. It was like, I was the only one that was like, oh my God, we're about to take off. And I kind of fed off of that all of these people can't be wrong. So, it must be okay. And that helped a lot. But I think the motivation came from knowing I was going to Denver and I was going to meet all of these people in this sense of community. So that helped a lot. But also seeing somebody younger, It's almost like you could see yourself, and she has courage not to wait 30 years to do it. And that was kind of the catalyst for me too. Also, hey, she could do it, I could do it.
I love that.
So, and then once you get off the plane, I was like, yay! Yeah, you can't beat that feeling. Yeah,
Exposure
so
therapy works, doesn't it? And there's such a reward at the end, right? That's the important piece, is that like for you had that Denver reward. And for those of us with, when you're treating OCD, it's the same thing. The reward is freedom. It's your life, right? It's being able to
yes.
get on and be able to go do these critical, important things that your OCD or anxiety is taken away from you.
Yeah, and I thought about Katie also, talking about leaning into your values. All of those things were kind of going through my mind when I'm days away from, getting on that plane. So that helped. And
Okay, well, I know we only have 5 minutes, and so I'm going to start with the wrap up because Chris, I want you to end. And I just want to say thank you to IOCDF, thank you for allowing us to have this community that is life changing. Sorry for having my baby through the half of this live stream today, but I know that you guys know we are who we are and we meet each other where we are. And I'm just grateful for that today and every day. And what I'm most grateful for is that the community isn't just the conference. For a lot of us, it might have started there, but you get to build a community that you get to have every day in between as well. Val?
I just thank everyone for their support, like you said, for showing up. It has been a rough couple of years for everyone across the board, but I think especially some of us who suffer from OCD and some of the things we had to face. Um, and I am just leaving this conference very encouraged, enlightened. I'm so proud of all of my team. I talk about you guys all the time. Uh, and I think that's very important. Uh, I also think I'm thankful for the opportunity for the meetings that I were able to attend to see all the work that goes behind what we do. It's not just us, but hats off to Jeff. I think he's great. He's very supportive. I'm going to give him his kudos while I can. But I just thank everybody. I thank you guys for being so inviting and so welcoming in my own life. That has made a tremendous difference. So thank you. Love you all.
What I wanted to say to kind of wrap is just, man, it was so humbling and amazing to have just people come up to me. I know they came up to Val and to Ethan and to Liz and stuff and just like say, hey, I've been watching your live streams. I've been watching the live streams, and it's kind of been the voice that's got me through this pandemic, and it's got me through even after the pandemic and hard times. And Liz and I and Val and all of us do these live streams, and I'm like sitting in my office or at home, and obviously we see the comments and stuff, but it's still difficult to like put people into person, like to actually know that, hey, it's people. So to have people come up to the conference and just say like hi and like thank you and stuff, I mean, that was the highlight for me, is just knowing that like the hard work we always put in is like people are receiving it, and they're receiving it well. So anybody that came up to us or anybody that came to the conference and said hi, we super appreciate it. I promise we do. And we're just as geeked to meet you as you are to meet us. I do want to do a special shout out to the IOCDF staff. I think sometimes when people go to the conferences or see these live streams, they think there's like a staff of 200, and it's really not. It's just a lot of really hardworking people, and then a lot of really, really amazing advocates and volunteers to put it on. So I promise you, if you haven't had the opportunity to come to an in-person conference, try to make it. I know there's a lot of obstacles, but if you can overcome it, it'll be absolutely incredible. It will be kind of one of those like life-changing moments. To take us out of a couple announcements. So the first one is tomorrow. Liz and I will be back for an all-new Ask the Experts live stream. We haven't had a live stream Ask the Experts in about 3 weeks, so we have 1,000,004 questions. So definitely come on by, and we'll ask all your questions. You can also submit some more ahead of time questions on IOCDF social media. So that's at IOCDF, or online at iocdf.org/peace of mind. And then an exciting update for next week's special editions of Community Conversations live stream. Lead advocate Tom Smalley of Anxiety in the Athletes will be filling in for Ethan. So that's next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern or 4 p.m. on the West Coast for me and Val. This live stream is one of many. You can see our entire schedule of future streams at iocf.org/peace of mind. You can also view recordings of past live streams on IOCF YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/IOCDF. Make sure to like and subscribe and get notified when live streams are scheduled. And make sure to follow IOCF on social media so that you can get updated when we go live and all the stuff that we do. And lastly, of course, if you need resources, please visit iocf.org. All right, Liz, take us out with something inspirational and heartwarming. And I love you all.
Oh, man. That's a rough one for me tonight. I was thought I was done. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing. I think what's heartwarming is this. It's this community, it's this opportunity, and it's the connections, because they are so valuable. And again, I think this community, these connections allow us to turn our pain into purpose. And I'm just excited that we can be a part of this journey for others, because it's a true privilege, as Jeff said, for all of us. So thank you all. And Chris and I will see you tomorrow, and Val will see you soon. Love you guys.
Okay. Love you, everybody.
I'm telling you, Val, you're teal. It's a movement. We're doing our nails.
Yes.
Bye-bye.